Right, okay, everybody, welcome to tonight's session. So, my name's Zain. I am one of the pre-reg shortcuts ambassadors. So tonight, this evening, we're going to go over some tips and things like that, answer some of your questions. Hopefully, I know we're gearing up to the last couple of weeks. Everyone's obviously very nervous. A lot of emotions going through everyone's mind at the moment. I was in the same boat pretty much this time last year. So it would be good to also see where you guys are at. So if everyone can hear and see me all okay, just pop maybe a 1 or something in the chat. That'll be good, and then we can get going. Okay. So we've got about 14 people on now. Okay, perfect. So I think in terms of the exam, I know we're about 2 weeks away from the main exam. Obviously, it's quite a strange time. Obviously, you're very busy with revision, trying to kind of structure the last 2 weeks are very, very important, because there's always that thought that you've missed something out. You need to cover this, you need to cover that, which is normal, right? I went through the same thing. Most of my cohort went through the same thing. I'm pretty sure everyone goes through that kind of mindset of, right, I missed something. What do I need to do? How do I structure the last 2 weeks? Now, I think in terms of where you are, that's very important. I think where you are in terms of your revision is very, very important. So if you're in a position where so it's kind of two different areas you can be in, really. So, and you know yourself where you're at, right? You know yourself where you are at, what you need to do, what you need to cover, more practice papers, for example, more questions, which is something we'll talk about in a short while. So I think there's two places you can really be. So there'll be like a cohort of people who say, right, I'm done. These last 2 weeks are just go over small subtle things, just covering, MEP, for example, or OTC stuff. And that cohort, you could say that they're in a very good position. But I think also the last 2 weeks are important for, say, the other cohort, the other group, for example, who think, right, well, I haven't covered, say, the musculoskeletal chapter, or I'm still trying to get my head around infections, or maybe a specific element of the endocrine system, for example. So don't forget, you have your high weighting chapters, and 60 to 70% of the questions in the exam will be from high weighting chapters. So I can speak on experience from that. So I remember my exam last year. So I was part of the first kind of group who did the exam online, which obviously you guys will do at the test centers. So for me, it was a case of, right, well, what do I need to do in the last 2 weeks, right? So I took time off work. That's another thing. Hopefully you guys have taken some time off work, or pre-reg, or placement and things like that, and hopefully your tutors and where you're working are being quite accommodating for that, which would be interesting to know, actually, if put in the chat, guys, if you have taken some time off now, or plan to next week maybe, or something, or if you've already taken time off. So maybe it'd be good to kind of pop in the chat if you have done that. So for me, I took 3 weeks off before my exam. On hindsight, I took too much time off. Because I ended up using the majority of my annual leave. So for the rest of the pretty much year, I had no annual leave left. But it was just driving me crazy. I mean, all my schedule was get up in the morning. So I used to do 10 practice calc questions in the mornings to kind of, get my head going, and I did 10 questions, and then I'd have like a schedule. So I knew, back to what I was talking about, what I needed to cover. So for me, it was the MEP, it was OTC stuff, and it was a few kind of conditions within the medium weighting chapters. So I kind of concentrated my revision around the high weighting chapters. I spent a lot of time on the high weighting chapters. So for me, and I was also doing practice questions at the time with practice mocks, which I'm sure you guys all have access to. So I was doing these questions in the morning, 10 in the morning, calcs, and then I get going with my revision and spend the morning doing that, and then the afternoon, and then the evening time I'd do some more stuff, and then in the evening, at night time before I went to bed, I'd do another 10 calculations. So imagine that. Pretty much I was in that routine for 3 weeks, so it was it was too much. It was too much. I think a week to 2 weeks is plenty of time to just kind of not focus too much on pre-reg, going into work early, dealing with queries, things like that. Your focus now is on the exam. These last 2 weeks are very, very important for you to structure your revision well. And again, you guys have to kind of take some responsibility in terms of, right, look at yourself or write down, what is it I need to specifically go over? Okay. If it's high weighting stuff, concentrate on that, because the majority of questions in the clinical will be on that. Okay. If it's, like I mentioned, OTC, MEP, structure your time around some, and I'm not saying just focus on those things. Like for me, for example, when it was my revision, as I mentioned, after I did the 10 questions in the morning of calcs, what I would then do is my main focus of the day. So for example, it might have been the blood and nutrition chapter, certain drugs within that chapter. I spent kind of the morning, afternoon doing that. And then the evening would be kind of recap. Okay. So I had an Excel kind of spreadsheet, if you like. So kind of structure Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I kind of had kind of time slots like 9 to 10, or 10 to 12, and then like a lunch break, or like a little break in the morning, and then I'd have kind of slots kind of already configured out, and I knew what I had a good structure into what I needed to do and what I wanted to do. So in the evening, then I'd go over those things that I've already covered. So for example, it might have been going over heart failure management, going over things like blood pressure management. So these are small things which probably will come up in the exam. And I spent my evening time, a couple of hours doing that, and then, like I mentioned, at night finishing off with the calcs. So like I mentioned, you guys need to kind of probably do something similar. If you've got a whiteboard or like a spreadsheet or a Word document, break down these last 2-3 weeks now. Okay. Look at your own revision, look at what it is you need to focus on, okay? And make that your kind of morning and early afternoon session. So you're spending a good chunk of the day going over that, okay? But then again, you're not neglecting the things you might have already covered or you feel confident in, because you'll cover those in the evening at some point, okay? So try and do that for a good couple of weeks. See if that kind of, if it highlights what areas you need to kind of focus on. Now that's the first kind of couple of weeks. Now, when it goes to the last couple of days, actually one thing I will mention is kind of practice questions. So these are very kind of important, but I'm not gonna. So for me, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out before the exam, I think I did about 3 or 4 clinical mocks. What I was trying to achieve, okay, you get to, you see what it is maybe you need to focus on, okay, but also B, it's time management. Now, time management is very important in the exam, and I'll go through my kind of experiences of the exam itself, and next, actually, I'll go over it next. So you got those two things. So once you kind of understand what it is you need to kind of do, then you can structure your revision that way. So with the question papers, like I mentioned, I only did a couple, but because I knew I had certain things to do, like I mentioned, I focused on that, okay? Because there's no point me doing question papers if I'm neglecting core knowledge that I need to learn for the exam. Because I might not get, if I did 3-4 mocks, maybe no questions come up on that specific topic or specific condition, for example, or that drug, but in the main exam, it may very well do. So you have to cover your core knowledge first of all, and then tackle the questions. So I did 3-4 clinical mocks. Main thing for me was kind of looking at, right, clinically, where do I need to go over certain things, but also time management. Now, calcs in the morning, I always make sure I was timed. I always made sure I was timed. I had a whiteboard. I knew you get a whiteboard. So in the exam, you get kind of an A4 whiteboard, kind of squared. You get about 3-4 copies, which is more than enough. You don't need a rubber. It's a permanent marker you get. It's more than enough. So maybe getting a whiteboard for the couch or something, you can get so you can get in motion of kind of getting used to a marker pen, things like that. So I did that in a timed manner. The clinical again was kind of timed as well. I think from my experience from the exam, the clinical timing wise, I had less pressure than the calcs. Yeah, so hopefully that's kind of I kind of broke down there my last couple of weeks. So I had a kind of a structure of what I wanted to cover. I looked and said, right, I need to cover this, I need to cover that. I kind of trusted my own knowledge of what I had learned, and focused on the things I thought, right, well, I need to touch base because this is an exam that covers a great deal of things. But the main core thing for everyone, I think, regardless of where you are in your revision, is making sure that those high weighted chapters you're spending your time on. Okay. My exam, a lot of the stuff was kind of endocrine and cardiovascular. So I had to kind of, and I did spend a lot of time going over endocrine and cardiovascular things. So, when it came to the exam, I was a bit more comfortable with those questions. So it's very important to focus on the high weighting chapters in your revision over the next couple of weeks if you need to. So quick one, we've got a question here. So I think almost popped in a good question here. Let's have a look. So when the Q&A, how would you spend your time in hours between paper 1 and paper 2? That's a good question, actually. Yeah. So I might as well talk about my kind of experience of the exam day. So I did my exam in a different city. So I actually went down. I was contemplating, do I drive down? It was about an hour, 15 minutes away. I have to get it for 9. I was contemplating literally a couple of days before, because I was so kind of in tune with my revision. I completely forgot, right, I have to actually get to this test center. Where do I park? Things like that. So I thought, right, sod that. I'm just going to go the night before. So I stayed in a hotel. I got there in the evening time. I didn't really do too much. I think what I went over was pretty much, again, just briefly reading over paracetamol and ibuprofen doses for children and high-risk drugs. Just reading over, that was it. I didn't kind of go over certain specific things, because the reality is, you're gonna, if people told me, oh well, I went over this in the night before and it came up in the exam and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, fair enough, maybe, but once you kind of get your mind into that kind of gear where I'll go over this topic, but then an hour before bed or whatever, half an hour before bed, you're thinking, oh well, maybe I should do this topic, and then another topic pops up before you know it, you're getting no sleep at all. So I think focusing on things will come up is important. So ibuprofen, paracetamol doses will definitely come up. High-risk drugs will definitely come up. Again, I'm not kind of learning new things. It's stuff I learned before, but just kind of going over it and remembering kind of, especially paracetamol and ibuprofen doses. And then I was pretty much in bed for about 11. I think I put a movie on, and yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get kind of the perfect 7 hours sleep. It was about 5 hours sleep I got, I reckon. And then I woke up, and a couple of my friends were also doing the exam that day, so we met up in the city centre where the test centre was. We went outside, and we went into the exam. So as you kind of go in, obviously it's a bit of a queue, so you kind of line up with the other candidates, get your passport checked, and then the good thing for my test centre was we weren't kind of waiting around too much. There wasn't any other tests going on as well in the morning anyway for the clinical. For the calcs. So calcs was in the morning. So yeah, we weren't waiting around. After passports were checked, everything was checked, jackets, everything into the locker. The staff there at my test center was really good. I think they kind of understood this would kind of make a break for a lot of candidates there. So they were quite nice. And then we kind of had to put our water bottles on the side. Now, I got lucky. So I know from what my friends told me at the time, some of their test centers were quite strict. They didn't let you take the water bottle inside. So we kind of all put them outside, and then for some reason, the woman, before we literally all went in, said, "Oh, you can take your water bottles inside if you want as well." So obviously, we all took pretty much all took our water bottles in inside, and then you kind of get your own cubicle. You sit in. There's instructions on the screen, and you go. And then I think for me, it was the first kind of 30 seconds of like kind of clicking on the exam and looking at it, and after that, after the first 30 seconds, you're in the zone, you know. And it was calcs first. Those 2 hours flew by. Okay. Now my kind of way of doing calcs was I did every question twice, so I didn't really kind of go through the exam and do it again. You know, which is kind of what is preached amongst kind of a lot of you know previous candidates, or even Ulmer, for example. You try and do each question twice. You do have the time for that. Realistically, you do have the time for that. And when I say do each question twice, you do it once and check the working again. Okay, make sure the figures are all right. So I did kind of question 1 twice, 2 twice, 3 twice. So when it came to question 40, I had about 20 seconds left. But I was fairly confident I hadn't missed anything because I'd done all the questions twice, or the working out at least twice. So I was pretty happy with that. Another reason also is because I never used to do that, but because it's online and not paper, it's quite different with paper. You know, you can kind of flick back, and you can look back at question 6, question 7. You can say, well, you know, you can literally flick through it as you would in any kind of physical written paper. But you can't really do that with the calculations online, because you're working out not on that page, it's on this whiteboard, and you know you might get mulled up because you're not used to it. So that's I'm not kind of advising that's the best way to go about doing it, but I kind of found it quite comfortable to do that. So by the time it came to question 40 and I was ready to submit, I was pretty confident that I'd touched all the bases, and if I made a mistake or if I got a couple of questions wrong, then it's probably due to the fact that it was rushing or didn't really know what the question was asking, and therefore my working out wouldn't have changed the second time around anyway. So yeah, and so I finished with not much time left, but submitted it. And then I can't recall how long we had. It wasn't long. It was about half an hour, 45 minutes we had. So me and my friends went to a Cafe Nero on the corner, and then it was just full of candidates who just sat the exam. And it was like everyone was talking about it. You know, what question? You literally hear it. It's like walking into a very, very, imagine we're walking into a very busy call center. That's pretty much what that Cafe Nero was like. So we kind of thought, right, we're not doing this. We kind of walked up a little bit and found a little small cafe and just had a coffee there. We didn't talk about the exam. We didn't talk about the what we got for question 1, question 2. We just asked each other, how did everyone find it? And that was it. I had a coffee. I think I had a croissant, and that was it really. And then I went straight back into the test center. So, and then it was time for part 2, and then it was the same process in the morning. You line up, you could leave your stuff in the locker anyway if you wanted to. You couldn't really. I can't remember if you had to leave it there during a break. I've got a feeling you might have had to. Again, this is something it might be test center dependent. I'm not too sure, but yeah. So we went in for the clinical. Now the clinical for me, I think the online format is really good. I think it's definitely better than the mocks you guys do. So it's one slide, one question per slide, whereas in a paper it's like 3, 4, 5 different questions. Your mind kind of, even though you're doing question 50, for example, it's natural. You just glance across, you'll see 56 or something, and you think, oh well, your main focus isn't actually on that question. It happened to me during my mocks. So it's really good. This where the system works is one question per slide, multiple choice, of course. And the clinical, to be honest, I did finish quite early. So I think finished about 30 to 45 minutes or something like that quite quickly. So I always found for me the time restraints even during my preparation was with the calcs rather than clinical. So that was it. And then we left. I think my friends had finished at the same time as well, and then we kind of just chilled in the city we were in for the day, and then drove back home after, and had a couple of days off after the exam, and just chilled out really, try not to think about it too much. And I think that's important as well. I think you guys have geared up now. You're literally in the final gear now for the exam, and like I mentioned at the start, you know what you need to do. It's up to you guys to make these last 2 weeks as productive as you want them to be, and they definitely can be. I think it's important to understand that you've worked really hard during this pre-reg year, and this is just a final hurdle, right? And I have no doubt a lot of you guys, all you guys, will make it through in a couple of weeks' time. It is daunting. My heart was racing a lot. I remember when I was there in the morning, completely natural. It was just about making sure you calm yourself down, try and be as professional as you can. Understand this is a formality you've done many times at university, A levels, GCSE. I know obviously it's hard to kind of say this is no different, because it is, because at the end of the day, this is what determines whether you enter onto that register or not. But the sort of circumstances is definitely different. But I think the process of any examination is quite similar, And once you're kind of settled in, once you're in the zone, whether you know a question or not, you're there, So you don't have time to kind of figure out what was going on or anything like that. You don't know who leaves, who enters. It's everyone's kind of just clicking and click next slide, click next slide. So that was kind of it. So you guys have worked very hard to kind of get where you are. So it's important to kind of make these last 2 weeks worth it and as productive as possible. So next question from Bismarck. Was the exams easier than the mock papers? 100%, without a shadow of a doubt. These mock papers were very, very tough. I think we've mentioned it many times, and I'm sure everyone's heard it. These mock papers are designed to be harder than the exam. I feel like that's kind of a constant saying, which I'm sure you guys have all heard, but it is true. And I think the whole point of these mocks are really to kind of outline what it is you need to specifically kind of go over. Some of these questions in the mocks are quite niche mock questions, but for me and for a lot of people I spoke to, it was definitely easier than the mock papers. But that being said, the mock papers are good to confirm a topic or something, but also to pick up where you might need to spend some time and revise. So yeah, that Bismarck. I mean, I understand some mocks you're probably doing at the moment. It goes for everyone watching here as well. You're probably thinking, "Oh my God, I'm not where I probably should be. Maybe 2 weeks out or a week out." For me, I remember one of the mocks I did. I think it was the second to last one I did, 50%. Now, it did worry me. And I was thinking, right, well, I shouldn't probably be getting 50% or just above 50% maybe in a mock a week or so before the main or the real thing. But when I went over the question, I thought, yeah, I mean, I just rushed it. I think a lot of the time I was thinking, right, I've kind of rushed this question. Of course, yeah, that makes sense. So the knowledge was there, okay. And it's what I said when you're in the exam and you're in that zone, you're so focused and you're so in tune with what's in front of you, literally, and you don't know who's going in, who's going out, or whatever's going on. You focus and you're almost kind of scrutinizing the question in a way where you're kind of picking out what it is you need to answer that question, whether it be in the calcs, figures, kilograms, pounds, whatever it might be, moles. So yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is when you're in that exam, is just focus, and you will be focused. You won't have any other option. You'll be so in tune. But yeah, Bismarck, don't worry too much about that. Do use the mock papers. The calcs are quite important. I thought the clinical mocks were much harder than the clinical mocks we did were much harder than the actual real thing. The calculations probably were as well for some mocks. But again, with calculations and clinical, and this is an important thing, which Marvin and Omar always said, guys, you don't need 100% in this exam. If you needed 100%, I definitely wouldn't be on the register. Most people probably wouldn't be on a register, so don't worry too much about needing 100%. You generally know what the baseline is to pass an exam for both clinical and calcs. And the reality is you will have enough knowledge to pass with those marks that they set out for the papers. So hopefully that answers your question, Bismarck. So we've got another one. Marvin, the main man, has popped in with a question. Zain, how did you stay positive the night before the exam on exam day? So I think I did mention my kind of process. The night before, I was in a hotel, so I drove down to the city I was doing the exam. Drove down, stayed in a hotel. I mean, I wasn't negative. I didn't kind of have in my mind, oh my God, I could very well fail this exam, or whatever. I didn't think, even when I was kind of recalling the ibuprofen doses, I remember I was thinking, right, well, I think I got one of the age brackets wrong, or I got them muddled up when I was revising them. I didn't think for a second, oh my God, I'm going to fail the exam. I thought, right, I need to make sure I learn this. It's probably going to come up. So I was positive in the sense that I knew I'd worked hard for the exam. I knew, because I was working also provisionally for a year, I knew that I'd obtained enough knowledge from working, especially working in a primary care environment, in a GP surgery. I was able to learn so much, see a lot of the things I was learning for my pre-reg exam actually in live practice, whether it be infection treatments, for example, skin infections, respiratory infections. Seeing this live in real life kind of helped as well. So I knew I had the experience. I knew I had done the work. Again, I didn't know everything before the exam, but I did have in the back of my mind that I spent the time going over what I needed to go over, and that knowledge was sufficient enough for me to pass. And that was kind of my mindset about a good week before. Okay, I didn't think, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I did kind of, building up to the exam. There were times I thought, oh my God, this is not going in. This is definitely going to come up. I'm not going to know what's going to, what the answer is going to be if this come up. In my preparation, that's normal. I think that's normal. But as I started to get, a bit more experienced in the revision process, and I started to understand a bit more about my revision techniques, what I need to cover, I was quite positive about a week before. So I knew I kind of had to go in, tackle it. And mentally, it's very important, guys. So when you're in that, night before, when you're in that moment, whether you'd be in a hotel room or your own bed, or wherever, your friend's house, don't kind of, I know it's hard. What I'm saying is, don't make it more than what it kind of is. I know you might think, well, what you're saying, because the next day's biggest exam of my life. That is true. But if you then kind of let that overwhelm you, you won't get any sleep for one, right? You'll be very stressed, and you will literally carry that into the next day. You'll be sleep deprived. You'll probably be dehydrated, and you're not going to be able to kind of be in the right mindset for the exam. So positivity is very, very key. And on the exam day, I think the exam day for me was like, I'm going into this exam. Nothing's going to stop me. Even if I got hit by the bus, I'm going to go do this exam. I think for me, it was like, I'm actually angry that I have to do this exam now. So I need to make sure I go in there, do the exam. I think I got to a point where I was revising so much, like I mentioned, 3 weeks off work, in my room revising, kind of do my own head in pretty much. I was like, I can't wait for this to be over with. So that's your end goal, really, guys. Because then once you finish that exam, that's it. You're pretty much done. A lot of you guys have pretty much finished pre-reg now already, or close to finishing. So, it's just so you got a nice break coming up as well. So, think about all of that. Think about all the things you missed out on the last couple of months revising. and what you're going to catch up on in August. There's so much things people, friends you can meet up with, places you can go. That was me really. Now I remember after the exam was finished, I was like, right, ABC, this is what I'm going to do over the next couple of days. So yeah, I think positivity. Marvin is, the king of positivity, and he always kind of doesn't try. He always does succeed in keeping everyone positive. And you've got to look at the bigger picture. You've done the work. You're going to be able to say in a month or 2 months' time, whenever the results come out, I'm a pharmacist, and it will be one of the most happy days of your life, really, because then that's one thing ticked off, and it's the next thing now. Whatever that might be. So you've got to look forward to these things and understand that this is just a formality. Try and get that into you, that mentality of just a formality. I know what I need to do. I've done it many times before at university. It's no different. Go in, tackle it, and you'll I'm sure you guys will exceed in that. So next question by H. So if the calculations paper doesn't specify a decimal place, do you leave it in to a whole number, or will the question specify? So yeah, so H, so in my exam, it pretty much specified what you want. They wanted to 1 decimal place, 2 decimal place. I presume it will be the same. Okay, so normally in the mocks, at the front section, it will say, if it's not to any decimal place, round it up. So I'm not too sure if that's how it was worded when the GPhC the year prior was, the GPhC exam the year prior was written, if that was on the front page. From what I can recall, that wasn't on the front page or the first slide when we did the online exam. So, and the questions that kind of, you're saying, if the question doesn't specify, those kind of questions where it might be kind of 28, there in all fairness, there wasn't really a question where it might have been 28.2468, for example. And you think, well, do I round it up? Do I not? There wasn't really a question like that. So if it is anything to go by, or there wasn't an answer really like that. So if there's anything to go by from my experiences, they will specify the decimal place. Otherwise, they'll just mention it in the first slide. And if it is a case of, like you mentioned, if a slide says, if it doesn't specify decimal place, round up to the nearest whole number, then round up or down. If that's what it says, that's what it says. So next question by Yuki. How many % would you need to pass? Is it 50% for both parts? Thanks. So I wouldn't say 50%, probably a bit higher than 50%. So general kind of ballpark, we kind of, again, this is just me, from experience and from what people have told me, and exam kind of grade boundaries from the previous years. You're probably looking somewhere between 26 to 30 in calcs for a pass, really, and then probably above 82, 83 in the clinical will probably be a good conservative number, I guess, to get in both. So slightly above 50%. But you never know. I remember the first cohort that did the online exam in March last year. Their grade boundaries were fairly lower compared to compared to back then, what would have been the recent years, but which kind of makes sense. COVID, new format. So yeah, Yuki, I think in terms of percentages, it probably would be a bit higher than 50%. Yeah. Okay, so we've got any more questions? We've got one here. Afsana. Okay, if I don't pass the exam, do I need to work as a pre-reg again for 6 months to be entitled for the exam? So my understanding is you don't need to do that as long as you kind of get signed off to your final sign off, which then. So again, I didn't do a second sitting, so I've not had to. Fortunately, I've not had to go through the process of reapplying, so I won't know the specifics of what you'd need. Say, for example, from a tutor, or if the sign off would be sufficient enough. But yeah, you wouldn't have to kind of work with a pre-reg, work as a pre-reg again for 6 months, providing you are actually signed off. I had a friend of mine who, even though she finished her pre-reg, she had to go back because she took some time off earlier in the year. So again, I know it's a bit of a different circumstance, but some people have to, even though they finished the exam, still actually go back to work. So she was another pre-reg for another couple of months. So yeah, providing a signed off of sauna, I don't see why you would have to even work for another 6 months or 3 months or a year or whatever to be entitled for the exam. I'm sure you're going to pass first time, so I wouldn't be too worried. But if it is a case of you're having to, unfortunately, if you fail the exam, you're going to apply again for the next sitting in a couple of months' time. The GPhC will release formal guidance on that. But don't think too negative of sauna. That's a question you can ask later down the line if you come across that situation. It's a bridge you can cross later. For now, last few weeks, don't kind of let these kind of questions be at the front of your mind. Just try and make sure you're fully absorbed in your revision for the last couple of weeks. Okay, so next question, Whitney, which mocks did you find most useful with your revision? So I'm not too sure if I can mention specific mocks in here. I don't see. Maybe if Marvin and Uma can maybe drop me a message and say if it's okay for me to drop specific uni mocks in here. I don't want to kind of plug them and then get in trouble. Maybe I'm not too sure why I would, but you never know. So if Marvin and Uma can maybe drop me a message. So we'll come back to that question, Whitney. If not, then what I will do in the pre-reg chat for you guys on the pre-reg chat, I'll drop down which mocks I found quite useful. So if any other kind of questions anyone wants to ask, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, Afsana, yeah, you're more than welcome. Any kind of questions people want to ask or anything that's kind of on your mind for the last couple of weeks. I know, like I mentioned, it's quite a daunting time, so it is. If you do feel you need to ask anything, you're more than welcome to. Okay. So Badria has asked, how are you performing in all the mocks before the exam? So yeah, so Badria, I mentioned I did about 3 or 4 main clinical mocks, so as in from start to finish. I did do more, obviously, in terms of picking 10 questions here, 10 questions there from the clinical, and I was doing 10 questions kind of every day at least. Try to do 20, but at least 10 calcs. And I was kind of picking and choosing from certain mocks, but when I kind of got the mock breakdown, so I'm sure you guys have all got access to the mocks from the different universities. I did choose 4 of the recent ones from some of the more reputable universities, shall we say, and save them for kind of now, pretty much the position you're in, last couple of weeks before the exam, annual leave, I saved them for then. So in terms of performing on those from kind of start to finish, like I mentioned in one of them, the second, I think my second to last one I barely got above 50%. I think on average I probably did okay, but I didn't do kind of great. I didn't do exceptionally well on any of them, to be honest. Especially the clinical, I wasn't hitting any kind of 95% or above kind of 90%, I don't think. So I was kind of, probably, well, I'll put it this way, Badria, in the main exam, that was my highest performance of any of the previous mocks I had done. So in the actual main exam itself, I did the best that I did than any other mock. So I wasn't performing exceptionally well. But the main important thing was, well, what can you take away from that? If you're not performing well in a mock right now, it's like, okay, well, what do you take from that? The first thing is this: they're designed to be hard. But the second thing is they're designed also for you to kind of point maybe where it is you need to focus on. So if you get a question wrong, for example, on the treatment if you, for example, you might come across questions where they give you a TSH and a T4, and you get a question wrong. And you think, okay, well, I probably need to go over thyroid disorders again. That kind of gives you an opportunity then to say, right, I'm going to go over thyroid disorders, but also I probably maybe need to go over certain other bits in endocrine, So it pinpoints kind of where you might need to focus on, okay, in a broad term as well as kind of a small term as well. So obviously on that specific condition that you might ask a question on, but also the broader kind of chapter itself, maybe I need to focus a bit more on that. So yeah, overall, Badger, like I mentioned, I wasn't doing exceptionally well in any of my mocks, but yeah, don't if you're not doing too well right now, honestly, do not let it dishearten you. My performance in the exams was the highest out of any of the mocks I had done. So hopefully that answers your question. Yep, no worries. So we've got a question here from Dami Lola. How did you structure your revision during study leave, annual leave? Yeah, perfect. So as I mentioned in the start, so what I kind of did was I had 3 weeks off before my exam. It was too much. Okay, I didn't need 3 weeks off. By the end of the second week, I was like, I was already tired, bored, kind of demotivated. And that wasn't because I was kind of put off by revising. It was just a long time to kind of be. I didn't really go out much. I kind of went for a walk every now and again, but I was so kind of in tune with my revision. I spent 3 weeks is too long, but I think 1 to 2 weeks is more than enough. So what I did was so the weekend before I was going on for my annual leave, study leave, I created an Excel kind of spreadsheet. So I kind of broke down every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, week 1, week 2, week 3, and I said, right, okay, I'm going to break it down into kind of morning slots, like an afternoon and evening. I wouldn't kind of revise past 8, 9. Well, not revise. I'd probably finish my revision at like 8, 9ish. I try not to go above too much, later than that. I used to kind of start at 9 in the morning, 8:30, 9 in the morning, and then continue that pretty much throughout the day with breaks in between. So for the start, Dami Lola, what I would do is I'd do 10 mock calculation mocks, 10 questions, sorry. So I do 10 questions from a random mock. I just do them and say, right, okay, and that would literally wake my brain up. It honestly would. And I noticed with the days I wouldn't do that prior to my annual leave, I'd be a bit groggy or slow, so the 10 calculations woke me up straight away. And then I kind of focused on, so when I made a spreadsheet, what is it I need to kind of go over, what it is. And you guys know yourself what specifically are the topics you need to cover over the next couple of weeks. Okay, now I would say that my priority, if I was you guys, if I've not done so, is a high weighting chapters. Why? Because that's going to be the majority of questions are going to be on that. You know that. So that's what my focus would be if I was you guys. So I kind of did that. There was a couple of other kind of medium weighted chapters I didn't really focus too much on. MEP, so I kind of focused on a lot of them. So a lot of my morning to afternoon slots on the Excel spreadsheet was that. And I had like a little break, and on my breaks I kind of used to maybe obviously have like dinner and snacks and things like that, but also I try and watch something a bit kind of funny or kind of lighthearted comedy. For me it was The Office. I wouldn't watch anything too kind of that's something I had to kind of be focused on. Like an hour-long episode. Office is perfect, 20-30 minutes. It's funny as hell. It's good comedy. So that's what I kind of did in my breaks as well. And yeah, so that I kind of did that for a good 3 weeks really. And then in the night time, what I did was, I kind of went over things that I thought I was quite confident on. So for example, whether it be kind of heart failure management, stroke management within the cardiovascular, I'd spend kind of the evening just going over that. Okay, so and then at night time I'd finish with 10 other calculations. So I do on average about 20 calculations a day. Again, they were from random mocks, and I had left 4 calcs and 4 clinical to do in the last week before the exam start to finish, timed and everything. So that's how I kind of structured my revision. I think it's important, you know, what it is you need to go over, focus on that, but also you're not neglecting by me doing the kind of evening couple of hours, I wasn't neglecting things that I was quite confident in knowing, because if you don't cover them for a good 2-3 weeks, you know, depending on you know your own kind of knowledge and how you retain information. For me, I need to constantly kind of go over things. That's how I kind of do it. So hopefully that helps, Damilola. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so question from Seth. Yeah. Okay, so what did we do in the last couple of weeks before the exam? I'm really tired and demotivated. Yeah, so very common, you know, very common to kind of feel that way. I was in the same kind of boat, absolutely shattered, you know, demotivated as well. It's hard to kind of, you know, if you don't kind of tackle that, especially early on in the last couple of weeks, it will kind of just linger on as the days progress and the weeks go on, and before you know it, the exam's around the corner. So I've kind of mentioned what to do in the last couple of weeks before the exam. I think in terms of feeling tired and demotivated, I think it's important in terms of the tiredness, I think look at how much sleep you're getting. Okay, again, the tiredness and demotivation is kind of linked together, right? You're demotivated, you know, you're tired, you're shattered, and they both go kind of hand in hand. You can't get any sleep because you're thinking about this exam, but you're demotivated to even do anything about it, right? So I think in terms of tackling the tiredness and demotivation is both hand in hand, making sure you're getting enough sleep. The demotivation part is very, very important. I think for anything really, but especially the GPhC exam is the bigger picture. I mean, the end goal. I mean, the end goal is you will be on the GPhC register. You're going to be a qualified pharmacist. For a lot of people, it's going to be the first time they get a job, first time into the workplace, where they're taking some responsibility. It's an exciting time in your career as well, just generally for pharmacists, especially in terms of different fields and opportunities that are opening up. So, I mean, in terms of demotivation, I think you've really got to look at the bigger picture, the end goal, because the end goal, you know, is something you can't really, you know, there's nothing that would be greater than that. I remember when I got my results and opened them, I had to. It was so strange. My Wi-Fi was lagging, and I remember like thinking, it's never ever being this laggy. And I was just constantly waiting. I was there for like 2 minutes, refreshing, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. All my friends are getting their results and getting messages and stuff like that. And I was waiting. And when I got my results and I saw that kind of pass notification certificate comes up, pass notification, I thought, oh, like incredible. I felt so kind of relieved, happy, but excited because I can now kick on with my career. You know, coming out of the pandemic as well, and saying, right, well, you know, onwards and upwards. So Seth, I mean, always look at the end goal, always understand the bigger picture. Demotivation and tiredness is very common, but you know, that end goal can't be overlooked. There's nothing better than it at the moment in time, obviously. And just imagine, you know, how I was without the internet lag, basically. When you opened your results and you passed, and you're shouting the house down, you know, everyone's waking up saying what's going on, you're calling people, you're calling this, and you're messaging everyone's so happy that you pass, and you're so happy. You know, always look at the end goal, and I'm sure once you kind of get your mindset in that kind of, you know, way, you'll be fine. So Seth, you know, I'm sure you'll do great in the exam. Just, you know, try and get that mentality, you know, positive, understand that, you know, you can do it, you will do it, and it's going to be good news in a couple of months' time. So let's have a look here. So I think we've got a question from Thanuja. Do you know how many SPC questions? Okay, we will get roughly in the maths and clinical paper. Any advice or tips on how to tackle them? I find it hard to find information quickly. Yeah, me too. So what I did was, in the SPC questions, I flagged them up. So I had 2 in my clinic, in my calcs, I believe. I think it was 2. It was either 2 or 3. It wasn't more than 3. They were very, very short, brief. All the information you needed was there. However, for me, some of them were kind of health economics, and I hate health economic questions. But the SPC questions, I looked at them, and this is what I do even when I was revising, doing mocks and stuff. I always used to try and come back to them. I said, okay, well, last thing I need is to be sifting through this, because a lot of the time, what you'll notice is you'll do the questions in a row. You might get 6 questions, there's no SPC, then you'll get 1, and then a couple more questions, and you get another 1, and then it's like, it kind of, for me, it kind of put me off the flow, if you know what I mean. What I prefer is if we have, say, all the SPC questions at the start or the end, get them out of the way, then you move on. Because even though the clinical, the calcs is one kind of format, the SPC questions is almost kind of a sub format within the exam, right? So, or in mock. So what I did was I flagged them all, came back to them towards the end of the exam. But in terms of kind of scanning for information, it's different to the actual mocks, where you get kind of pages and pages of the EMC or things like that. In the calcs and the clinical, the information you needed was pretty much in 1 or 2 paragraphs. So it wasn't hard to find the information quickly. So the SPCs weren't difficult. So back to the point you mentioned, I find it hard to find information quickly. Me too. I think a lot of people are the same as well. So the benefit that I had from the online exam was it was just there, really. It was just there. A couple of paragraphs, quick skim reading, and it was fine. It kind of made, I think, things a lot easier. And we actually got that heads up from people who sat, because don't forget, when I did mine in this time last year, pretty much, there's a couple of days that the exam was done. I did mine on the last day, I believe. But I had friends who did it on the other couple of days, and they mentioned the same thing. That's literally the question I asked them. What's the SPC questions like? They said it's a couple of paragraphs. It's fairly easy. So yeah, Thanuja, I don't think it will be as hard as kind of doing the mocks now. The information is pretty much given to you. So yeah, I wouldn't kind of worry too much about that. But I guess preparation generally, if you look at where a lot of these SPC questions come from, they come from the EMC, the BNF as well, especially if you go on. So my advice would be if you go to the EMC and understand, type in, for example, I don't know, salbutamol or metformin or whatever kind of common drug, and just see how it's kind of structured. What's chapter 1 is, chapter 2 is, chapter 3 is. It comes up right at the top, so you get a better idea of what it is. Maybe questions asking for, say, if it's a syringe driver question, for example, or if it's a calculation on dilution or whatever it might be. You'll know basically where the information will be. The BNF as well, a lot of the BNF SPC questions relate to, say, the medicinal forms tab right at the bottom, where, for example, you have to calculate the number of pens you might need for insulin pens, and the BNF extract will tell you how many units is in per mil. So it's, if you're going to learn anything and how to kind of navigate your way through these SPC questions, especially for calcs, is maybe go over the EMC, understand what each kind of heading is and what information is under that, and just have a flick through of the BNF as well, and see how the online BNF is formatted. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Yeah, you're very welcome. So guys, we're pretty much about an hour in. Unless there's any last questions, we'll probably be wrapping this one up. So Whitney asked a question. Whitney, are you in the pre-read shortcuts group at all? Are you on the Telegram chat? What I'm going to do is I'm going to pop after the call. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pop in the pre-read shortcuts chat what I found with the best kind of mocks, so the best mocks that I felt were the ones I left towards the end anyway. Okay, Whitney, perfect. Yeah, great. Okay, no worries. So yeah, perfect. Seth, you're very welcome. Again, don't try and feel, I know it's hard, very hard, You're going to feel tired. Just try not to feel too demotivated. Look at the end picture. Look at the end goal. You've had to pretty much get through uni during a pandemic, go through pre-reg pretty much, still in a pandemic. We're coming out of it now. And you've all done so well to kind of get in the position you're into now, where you're going to be tackling the GPhC exam. And it is an important time. It's a very important time for everyone. But I think for all you guys now, it's just a case of, understanding what you need to kind of do over these next couple of weeks, getting your mentality straight, understanding what it is you need to cover, and then, also not neglecting the things you say maybe don't need to cover because you feel confident in them. So structuring your day like that is quite important. Trisha's got, I think, one last question. Any tips on time management? I always set aside time for a topic, but end up taking more time. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think taking more time for certain topics is fine. I guess it's normal, really. But there'll be some topics where you don't take as much time. It's kind of both sometimes. But yeah, time management. Like I said, I had an Excel spreadsheet. I knew what I needed to do in the morning. I knew what I needed to do in the afternoon, and also in the evening. Okay, rather than kind of freestyling it on a day, waking up and thinking, yeah, I'll just do this one. I'll just do this. And then I might do that, or I might do that. Structure it formally. Get it on Word. Get it on your phone. Screenshot it. Put it, on your screensaver. Structure it. Do it formally. Make it nice and professional. So when you look at that, you think, right, okay, I need to do this. Need to do that. Need to do this. And you have a professional approach to it. You'll be successful because you've structured it. You've organised it. And structure and organisation are probably two of the most important qualities to have as a pharmacist. So be sure to kind of do that. So yeah, so kind of final thoughts from me is, you're gearing up now to the last couple of weeks. You're all pretty much nearly there. Make the last 2 weeks as productive as you possibly can. Okay, those who are on the pre-reg Telegram chat, motivate each other. If you're feeling a bit like, oh, can't be bothered today, put it in a chat. No doubt someone's going to say, well, do it. I feel the same, but I'm still going to do it. So motivate yourselves. Motivate each other. Look at the end picture, and then on the day of the exam, laser focus, kind of professional, killer mindset. And no doubt you guys will be successful in the exam. I've no doubt you're all going to pass it. You're all going to be in a GPhC register in a couple of months' time, and then you're going to kick on from your career. And then you're going to think back to this moment and think, right, well, I've done the hardest exam in the world, right? Which for a lot of you guys is what it feels like at the moment, and I've overcome it in great fashion. So it's onwards and upwards. And that should be what you guys should be striving for. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. We've been on here for pretty much an hour. So some great questions there. It's lovely to speak to you all tonight. So about 9 o'clock. So hopefully you guys have a nice evening. And any questions, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. Yeah. So all the best. Wishing nothing but the best, and I'm sure you guys will do great. So see you guys later.